What is up, guys? You're very welcome to another video here on Degenerate Watch. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you're all having a fantastic day out there. In this video we're going to be taking a look at some degeneracy on the high seas. Everything from salty sea dogs who should have thrown down the anchors a long time ago, to shoddy health and safety practices and dodgy equipment. And we'll also be taking a brief look at some historic degeneracy at sea. You may recall in a recent episode of Airline Agitators we did a feature on rogue pilots. Well, I guess this is sort of our maritime version of that. So now without further delay, let's hop right into the video. Enjoy! The captain in this clip seems to be having a bit of a mare, and I don't mean the French word for sea, I mean nightmare. Looks like after this voyage the only thing he'll be captaining is an inflatable at Splash World. Really handy though for the guests that are staying in that lodging because they can walk straight from the ship into their front room. We're at the entrance to what looks like a busy harbour, and I'm not quite sure what these gentlemen are at in this rowing boat. It would appear that they're up a particular creek beginning with the letter S, but fortunately for these men they seem to be equipped with paddles. The wakes coming from behind the other boats exiting the harbour can't be helping things, and the men's futile attempts to paddle away don't seem to be working. And there's nothing really left for our poor old captain to do, only to toot his horn for all the good that'll do. Our captain here was so excited and eager to get out onto the open seas that he couldn't be bothered going around the marina to get to the exit and decided to take a shortcut. That's going to be pretty expensive. Moving on to our next clip, and this captain has decided to give his multi-million-dollar vessel a bit of a haircut. I'm not quite sure what's to blame here, perhaps a higher than usual water level maybe. But for sure this captain's going to have some explaining to do to the owners of the ship. Luckily nobody was injured and the ship managed to dock safely. We're headed to Indonesia now, where the captain of this oil tanker seems to be going at a fair clip towards this fuel dock, but I think we'll give the poor guy the benefit of the doubt and presume that perhaps some mechanical failure happened here. I'm not quite sure if there were any injuries or not, but it didn't look like there was anybody standing on the dock when the boat hit, and I'd presume that he was probably blowing the ship's horn to warn people there to get out of the way. But regardless of the cause, it looks like a real headache for somebody and an expensive accident indeed. Staying in Indonesia, and more specifically a place called Batam, we have another tanker called the Eastern Glory that seems to have fallen foul of the strong current. Despite the valiant efforts of the tugboat crew to stop the massive ship, the current proved too strong and the ship too heavy, which resulted in the large tanker colliding with a nearby bridge. We can't say from this footage exactly how much damage was done, but I presume there was some sort of damage done to the bridge and the ship, but as we all know too well, things could have been much worse. I'm not trying to dogpile in on the nation of Indonesia here, but this is yet another clip from Indonesia. The ultimate bad day at work here for this captain, as this boat was on its maiden voyage. But not to worry, because the paint job wasn't all that great, because I don't know what the guys that painted it were actually at, but they don't seem to be able to paint a straight line. Now if masking tape couldn't be provided at the shipyard, then I fear for what else wasn't provided. In this clip here we can see these buildings are built in a very precarious location, right on a route where bulk cargo carriers travel. It'd probably be alright if they were built on land, just not on the water. Not the best idea, as the law of probability said that eventually something will go wrong, and it was a very close shave on this occasion. I don't believe that building is actually a house. I think it's some sort of a small fisherman's wharf or something like that. But with things being unpredictable such as currents, winds and mechanical failures, building something there wasn't really the best idea, was it? The sea being unpredictable in its nature wouldn't be the safest working environment on the planet, and due to the sheer size of the vessels and the equipment being used, when things go wrong they can go very wrong. Another terrifying prospect is the fact that if you're miles offshore, it could be hours before you actually get help to your location. So with the stakes being so high, safety should be the #1 priority. So let's take a look at some precarious situations, and we'll also see a couple of anchor drop fails as well at the end. Here we're on board a vessel that lays undersea pipes. I'm not sure what's happening here, whether they're taking on a load of pipes or they're lining them up ready to lay them. My initial observations before I've even played the video have me slightly worried. First off, we have those two massive pipes being lifted by the crane, which I'm sure weigh an awful lot. And anything being lifted in that manner obviously has the potential to start swinging. The men who are standing on top of the pipes down in the hold are in a very dodgy position against that wall. The only way to really escape is to run towards the bow or the stern, depending on where you are at the particular end of the pipe that's swinging. But anyway, let's play the video and have a look at this madness. The guy down at the bottom of the screen has a guide rope attached to the pipes in order to stop them from swinging, but it seems to get a bit away from him here now in a second. One of the other workers sees that he's struggling and comes to his aid, but it doesn't seem to be really much use. And if I was those other guys at this point, I'd be trying to get away from that whole area altogether. And as the pipes come swinging in and clatter off the side of the ship, you can see from the shaking of the camera just how heavy they are. They'll make the whole ship rock. And these lads here are just fortunate enough that this wasn't a bit lower. Just keep an eye on this guy here. He's after avoiding getting crushed the first time because the pipe hit just above him, and now he's nearly after getting his ankles crushed. Fortunately for that guy, the pipes were moving a lot slower than they had been previously, and he was able to climb on top of them and get away to safety. A very high potential there for serious injury or perhaps even a loss of life, and I can only imagine what that ship is like if you're moving those while they're at sea in choppy conditions. Our next incident happened in the Black Sea in 2021 and involves the 46-year-old cargo ship the MV Arvin. And this video is a prime example of how powerful the sea is and how much it should be respected. As you see here, the ship's hull is snapped in two like a twig. And those noises that are running through the boat are just gut-wrenching. I can't imagine how the crew must have felt, especially having to get out into choppy seas like those. When the incident happened, the ship was at anchor, which I'd presume was to shelter from the storm. But tragically, in this circumstance, it didn't seem to work out, and a number of crew members actually lost their lives in this incident. A stark reminder of the dangers that come with working on the sea. A fire on board a vessel at sea is something very dangerous indeed, and that's exactly what happened to this vessel carrying some cars. Thankfully, this vessel made it to port safely after the fire. A battery was the suspected cause. Our cameraman in this clip is standing in a pretty unfortunate position during this boat launch. Just wait for it. When I first seen this video, I really wasn't expecting this. I was expecting the boat to perhaps capsize or perhaps the spectators to get covered in water. Those pieces of timber are quite large and flying through the air at a high speed. I'd be surprised if the cameraman walked away from that uninjured. This boat looks like it was just about to be launched, but it had other plans. Judging by the primal scream let out by one of the workers, I can tell the boss isn't going to be too impressed. The most perilous part of this ferry journey isn't the actual journey on the sea, it's disembarking at the dock. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like somebody got a little bit eager and put the ramp down a bit early. I'm not sure jumping off here is the best option. It was making me anxious because I thought somebody was going to end up getting their leg caught in between the dock and the ramp. I just noticed the words "safety first" written above the deck there. How ironic. Bet you the passengers are thinking, is that some sort of a joke? We're going all the way back to the 12th of February 1988 here, and we're back in the Black Sea. And this incident that we're going to take a look at had the potential to start a conflict. Like I said, this incident happened in 1988, and that of course was during the Cold War, and the American cruiser the USS Yorktown was trying to exercise the right of innocent passage through Soviet territorial waters in the Black Sea. This incident also involved the US destroyer the USS Karan, which was sailing in company with the USS Yorktown and also claiming the right of innocent passage. At the time, the Soviet Union recognised the right of innocent passage for warships in its territorial waters solely in designated sea lanes. The United States, on the other hand, believed that there was no legal basis for a coastal nation to limit warship transits to sea lanes only. Subsequently, the US Department of State found that the Russian language text of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, Article 22, Paragraph 1, allowed the coastal state to regulate the right of innocent passage whenever necessary, while the English language text did not. Following the incident, the Soviet Union expressed a commitment to resolve the issue of innocent passage in Soviet territorial waters. So let's take a quick look at the background and what led up to this incident. In 1979, the United States launched an informal program to promote the rights and freedoms of navigation and overflight guaranteed to all nations under international law. The US government said that it had initiated the program because some countries were beginning to assert jurisdictional boundaries beyond traditional claims. The US wanted to stop this and said that diplomatic protests so far had seemed to be ineffective. They feared that a new customary international law could emerge if nations avoided operating their ships and aircraft in the disputed areas, and the US saw this as undesirable. During the 1980s, US warships were passing through the straits from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea 2 or 3 times a year to show the flag and to claim the right of innocent passage in the coastal states. According to a US government official at the time, the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus form an international waterway under that convention, and if you don't periodically reaffirm your rights, you find that they're very hard to revive. And meanwhile, in Russia, they were enacting their own rules, which were called the Rules of Navigation and Sojourn of Foreign Warships in the Territorial Waters and Internal Waters and Ports of the USSR. That's a mouthful. Those rules were enacted in 1983 by the Soviet Council of Ministers and acknowledged the right of innocent passage of foreign warships only in restricted areas of Soviet territorial waters in the Baltic, Sea of Okhotsk and in the Sea of Japan. And no sea lanes for innocent passage in the Black Sea were designated. Soviet vessels and aircraft were routinely dispatched to observe US warships there. During the 1980s, the Soviet Union viewed the US presence in the Black Sea as an attempt to undermine improving Soviet-American relations. 2 years previously, in 1986, there was an incident in the Black Sea involving the same 2 ships, the USS Yorktown and the USS Kharan. A meeting of the Soviet Defense Council was held later that same year, and at the meeting the Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy, Vladimir Chernavin, suggested to Mikhail Gorbachev and other senior officials that intruding foreign warships could be driven from Soviet waters by several means, including bumping. During the 1986 incident, which happened on the 13th of March, both the USS Yorktown and the USS Kharan entered Soviet territorial waters in the Black Sea near the southern Crimean Peninsula. The 2 warships passed within 6 miles of the Soviet coast, where they were soon confronted by the Soviet frigate Ladny. The commander of the Ladny notified the US warships that they had violated Soviet territorial waters and requested that they depart immediately. The US warships confirmed receipt of the warning but did not change course. The Soviets placed their Black Sea air and naval forces on combat readiness and dispatched border guard vessels and naval aircraft to intercept the US warships. The Yorktown and the Kharan stayed in Soviet territorial waters for roughly 2 hours. The situation de-escalated when the US ships left. So that actually set in motion the conditions for the 1988 incident that we're going to take a look at. On the morning of the 12th of February 1988, the Ticonderoga-class cruiser USS Yorktown and the Spruance-class destroyer USS Kharan conducted an innocent passage exercise in the Black Sea. Kharan passed 7.5 miles or 12.1 kilometers off the Soviet shore, and the Yorktown drew to 10.3 miles or 16.6 kilometers offshore. The commander of the Black Sea Fleet, Mikhail Chronopoulo, received an order from the Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy, Vladimir Chernavin, to curb the passage of the US warships. Initially, the destroyer Krasny Kavkaz was tasked with confronting them, but she experienced some technical problems, so the Bezavetny, a Krivak-class frigate, was dispatched instead. The commander of the Bezavetny was Captain Vladimir Bogdashin, and it's noted that the Bezavetny was about half the size of the Yorktown. The USS Kharan was approached by the Soviet frigate SKR-6, commanded by Captain Anatoly Petrov, and was approximately 1/4 the size of the Kharan. The Soviets had also dispatched some Tupolev Tu-16 bombers to monitor the vessels from the coast. At about 9:56 AM local time, the captain of the USS Yorktown reported that he was contacted by the Bezavetny via Channel 16. He was told to leave Soviet territorial waters or our ship is going to strike yours. The Soviet frigate SKR-6 was first to make a move and approached the Kharan, and at about 10:02 AM local time, SKR-6 bumped the port side aft of Kharan at about 60 feet or 18 metres from the bow. The Kharan received a superficial scraping of paint with no personal injuries. At about 10:03 am, the Bezevetny came alongside the port side of the Yorktown and bumped it by turning into the ship. The starboard anchor of the Bezevetny was torn away. 2 Harpoon missile canisters on the Yorktown sustained damage when Bezevetny's bullnose passed down the port quarter. Bezevetny then cleared the port and took station about 300 yards or 270 metres off the port beam of Yorktown. Bezevetny required a minor repair. Having bumped the Yorktown, Bezevetny was ordered to move away and not to contact her again. Both US warships stayed on course even after the incident and left Soviet territorial waters at about 11:50 am local time without further incident. In the aftermath of the incident, the Soviet Ministry of Defense issued a statement blaming the US warships for ignoring the warning signals of Soviet border guard ships and for dangerously manoeuvring in Soviet waters. Upon returning to port, the Soviet captain Vladimir Bogdasin learned that his actions had divided opinion within the Soviet leadership, with some demanding he be punished. The fleet commander scolded him for losing the anchor, while the fleet's chief navigator was concerned that Bogdasin had violated the international rules for preventing collisions of vessels at sea. Bogdasin was summoned to Moscow a couple of days later and recalled that he learned his fate was finally decided by the chairman of the KGB. That man's name was Viktor Chubrikov, and he actually reported to Gorbachev that Bogdasin had actually done everything right, to which Gorbachev didn't object. So I think that gentleman there was very fortunate that he didn't end up in the gulag. The incident also drew a diplomatic protest from the US government. Soon after, the issue of innocent passage was resolved between the two nations when the USA-USSR joint statement on uniform acceptance of rules of international law governing innocent passage was issued, acknowledging the rights of each nation to transit territorial waters. In summary, I think that sort of a tactic of ramming other ships in order to keep them out of your waters is a bit of a childish move. And speaking of childish things, those Soviet ships look like toys compared to those US warships. When both of them rammed the US warships, they didn't even move, so they weren't going to actually manage to push them out of Soviet waters whatsoever. So it was a pretty fruitless endeavour, to be quite honest. Something else I found quite amusing was the hypocrisy of the Soviet leadership. They go and instruct these captains to go out and ram other ships, and then when they do it and damage those ships, they get criticised for it back home. It's a very foolish and dangerous tactic to be engaging in, and luckily that sort of thing doesn't go on as often as it did back then. But that's not to say there's still not these tit-for-tat incidents to go on with planes doing flybys and all sorts of other intimidation tactics. And of course now with the situation in Ukraine and a sort of renewed Cold War, you'd never know, we may see tactics like this becoming more common in the future. That sort of stuff doesn't work, as the more you posture and intimidate, the more other people are going to face you down and continue to do what they were doing. And in the long run, things weren't sorted out on the high seas after all. They were sorted out around a negotiation table in a civilised way. We're coming to the end of our video now, and as promised earlier on, I said I'd show a few anchor drop fails, so that's what we're going to take a look at now. But before I continue, if you guys liked this video because it was something a bit different than what we normally have on the channel, definitely let me know if you want to see more things like this down below in the comments. And as always, don't forget to smash that like button, as it does really help the channel out. So now let's take a look at some anchor drop failures, and you definitely don't want to be in the way when one of these things starts running out of control. Here's a brand new merchant ship undergoing some sea trials in Germany, but things don't appear to be going too well. Fortunately for these guys, they managed to hold on to the anchor, because that could have been a very costly loss, especially on a vessel that hasn't even made its maiden voyage yet. Kinda like the vessel earlier on in the video with the dodgy paint job that had it scratched up in bits before it even left the harbour. Perhaps the cause here were that the brakes weren't set properly, or even maybe there was a brake failure altogether. But thankfully that's what sea trials are all about, to iron out all the little problems and snags before the ship starts its working life. Next up, we're going back to the 17th of January 2001, where the USS Tarawa, which is an amphibious assault ship, dropped the port anchor and lost it. This ship served in the United States Navy from 1976 until 2009, and is the second ship to be named for the Battle of Tarawa, fought during World War II. The ship was decommissioned on the 31st of March 2009 at San Diego Naval Base. The USS Tarawa was involved in both Iraq campaigns, including Operation Desert Shield and Operation Iraqi Freedom. The ship is currently laid up at the Naval Inactive Ship Maintenance Facility at Pearl Harbor. In July 2014, the US Naval Amphibious Ship Historical Society was formed by members of Tarawa's original commissioning crew. They have plans to make her the first Navy amphibious ship museum. The organisation is executing plans to acquire the ship and give her a permanent home on the west coast as a museum. I did do some digging to see if this had come to fruition, since it was a good few years ago. But sadly I haven't come to find anything, so if anybody knows if they did actually manage to accomplish their goal, please let me know down below in the comments. The only thing I did find was a page on a website called KickTrack. So I'm led to believe it's sort of a crowdfunding website similar to Kickstarter, and unfortunately according to that their funding goal was not met. It would be nice to see a ship like this, especially a ship that's been involved in some historic campaigns, to be actually preserved as a museum for future generations. And it's something you don't often see, an amphibious landing ship as a museum, so it'd be quite unique as well. And just like that, that's one expensive loss. And you could see as well, once I got to the warning shot, they all got out of there as quickly as possible. And quite luckily as well, because that could have led to a serious injury, but thankfully on this occasion nobody was injured. The anchor itself weighed 40,000 pounds or 20 tonne, and the chain weighed 12,000 pounds per shot, of which there were 12 shots, a warning shot and a danger shot also. So the total weight of equipment lost was 208,000 pounds or 104 tonnes altogether. And now onto our final anchor drop. By the looks of things there on that ship with the buntings and everything, it looks like a fairly new ship. It could be sea trials or it could be a maiden voyage. And luckily here, like our other clips, nobody was injured, which is very lucky because these things are absolutely lethal when they go out of control. I don't know if any of you guys noticed, but in some of the clips that are taken on board some naval ships, you'll see every couple of seconds there's some interference in the video. Sometimes you'll notice this in a very timed pattern, and that's usually caused by the ship's radar. Because it's so powerful, every time it does a sweep past, it causes electronic interference with the camera. I just thought that was an interesting point to note. I'm not quite sure these days with modern technology if that's still a thing that happens with cameras, but if anybody knows, let me know down below in the comments. Well guys, I hope you did find that video interesting, informative, and of course entertaining. And if you'd like to see more videos like that here on the channel, please do let me know. And of course, if you did enjoy it, don't forget to hit that like button, as it's really appreciated and really helps us out. If you like what we do here and you'd like to help support the channel, don't forget to check out the links down below in the description where you can do just that. Also, another great way you can help support the channel is by becoming a channel member. You can find out more about that by clicking the join button down below this video or hitting the link down below in the description. Or you can hit the heart button down below this video to send us a super thanks. I also have a blog over on Coffee. You can check that out at the link down below in the description, and there'll be some new content going up on there very soon. And for anybody interested in getting their hands on some Degenerate Watch merch, we're actually having a sale at the moment over on our store where you can get 20% off by using the code WOLF22 at checkout. Go over and check out our store and see if there's anything there that might interest you, and don't forget to use that code if you do decide to purchase something. Link to that down below in the description. Don't forget to make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss our next video here on Degenerate Watch, which will be coming in the next couple of days, and I hope you'll join me then. And I want to give a massive shout out to all our channel members. Your continued support is very much thoroughly appreciated. And also a big shout out to everybody that's watching this with me on the premiere. Thank you very much for joining me. But in the meantime, if you haven't checked out some of our other videos, why not check out some of the videos that should be appearing on screen now. Until next time guys, stay safe, take care, peace.